Good morning and welcome to My Left Ear post-indictment. I am Carrie Freeman. I'm the writer, producer, director of My Left Ear. We are a liberal-leaning YouTube channel, and I do psychic commentaries, and I utilize the runes also. So it makes for some interesting video and stories. What I do when I'm not here is I'm an author, and I do private sessions with people through therapeutic hypnosis and intuitive psychic coaching. I'm sort of a practical mystic. That came to me yesterday, by the way. I was just in the car. It's like, you're really kind of a practical mystic. And I went, oh, I like that. So I'm adding that to my resume, practical mystic. I have 3 books. I have one coming out this summer, and I have a Patreon channel that I'm just shaking it up. I'm doing all different kinds of things on the Patreon channel. Last Patreon, I really like this one. I did an Patreon episode on listening and intuition, and I can do more on that, but that was fun. And what I do here is I sort of take the big stories and disseminate, and then I break them down and share with you. Please subscribe and like if you like, okay? Thanks very much. And below are links to how you can get in touch with me, ask me for a cheat sheet of my services and prices, etc., etc. So I do want to share with you that Mercury is about to go retrograde. And Mercury, not that I'm an astrologer, but this one I know is all about communication. And so it's an interesting time. And it also is the planet of communication is Mercury, and it goes into a backward movement. So during this time, we often run into and hear from people from our past. Communications can break down. It can be very positive. It can be very frustrating. So it begins April 21st, but there's a shadow period that's a pre-retrograde shadow that kicks off. So it's occurring in the sign of Taurus. Now, not being an astrologer, I'm not sure exactly what that means. So you might want to do a little research on Google. But the pre-retrograde shadow has kicked off. It began on April 7th, and then the post-retrograde shadow period ends on May 31st. So we're in the soup, and I've already started hearing from clients from the past, and I found out 2 days ago that I'm going to a memorial service where I'm going to see all kinds of people from my past. So this is interesting. Now, I just want to tell you something funny. Last Monday, I did like a 5 or 6 minute episode where I pulled one rune, and people liked it. And I got the rune of fertility on Monday. So this was really accurate. I'm just going to share with you all the things that happened, and we're still not through it. There's today and tomorrow for the week. Obviously, Trump got indicted on Tuesday, officially, which was great. I'll talk about it a little bit more. PENCE has agreed to testify and not fight the subpoena, and he's testifying about January 6th. That would be with Jumpin' Jack Flash Smith, that fantastic prosecutor. In Tennessee, young people turned out in record numbers regarding gun control. It was beautiful. And then in Madison, Wisconsin, I'm just going to read this because it's just so great. A Democratic-backed Milwaukee judge, Janet, oh my goodness, I don't think I can say this name, Protasiewicz. I'm not kidding. It's a really hard name to say. It looks like it might be Polish. My sister-in-law is Polish. But anyway, she's 60, and she defeated former Justice Dan Kelly, an all-around horrible individual, and won the high-stakes Wisconsin Supreme Court race on Tuesday, ensuring liberals will take over the majority control of the court for the first time in 15 years, people, with the state of the state's abortion ban on the line. So she's coming in like just in the nick of time, as the song says. She won by 10 points over this ultra MAGA opponent. This happens to be very positive for abortion rights, choice. Now, we have to wait and see a little bit, because Wisconsin is really angry about this and they want to impeach her or get her out of this position. I don't know yet whether they'll be able to do that. So I didn't even throw a rune yet because she just won. And I just want to say her opponent, Dan Kelly, who's like a super MAGA, involved with the fake electors for Trump, he got up and he said, I am not giving a concession speech because this woman is not worthy of anything. And then he went on to call her names, that her win, she's despicable, she's a liar. I mean, it was really horrible, but he only made himself look ridiculous, really bad. What a piece of you-know-what, Dan Kelly. And then lastly, the fertility brought us Marjorie Three Toes, went to New York to protest Trump's indictment, and she got really run out of Dodge. People came out with drums and whistles, and they drowned her out. They yelled at her. They told her to get out of New York, and she did. It was overwhelming. She blames Mayor Adams for causing that. Because she's very much like Trump. She blames everybody, and she holds no responsibility. And what I said on Twitter, this is just coming to mind right now, I don't have it written down, is that the interview that she did on 60 Minutes last Sunday with Leslie Stahl, that had all-time low rating of 33%. They had a low rating once before like this. This was big. People boycotted 60 Minutes. And it's much more than she's a Republican, Margie. She's a domestic terrorist. She's a propagandist. And that's what people, it wasn't someone with a differing opinion, it's who she is that caused all of it. But it was nice to see her not have any power in the middle of the New York throngs. And they say she went straight to Mar-a-Lago, which I call Mara-Fargo. So Marjorie Three Toes, she's very much like Trump. It just got evidently some female equipment, and I even doubt that because she seems very male to me. So this is funny. I did pull that rune on Monday, which was the fertility, but I also went into a little talk at the beginning about the geological tectonic plates shifting. So guess what? 3 days later, Nicole Wallace talked about the tectonic plates shifting. Now, I haven't talked about this before, but I have a lot of things that I post on Twitter that end up on these TV shows, MSNBC. The other thing was that for fun on Twitter, I renamed Trump's new attorney, who seems like a mafia guy. He seems like something out of The Sopranos. His name is Joe Tacopina. But I renamed him Joe Tapioca because, I like nicknames. And I just kind of fell in love with Joe Tapioca. But then I was watching Saturday Night Live Weekend Update, and they named him Joe Tapioca. I don't know how this is happening, but it's blowing my mind. So now I'm starting to keep kind of a list of these odd coincidences that happen. I could be sending and receiving, or they could have office aides and producers looking up things on Twitter and going, oh, I like that line, we're going to use that. They certainly can. I have no legal right to it. All right, now we're going to go to Trump's indictment, history-making ex-president. He was very docile in court, but I got to tell you, I worked 8 years in drug and alcohol rehab. He was loaded on pills, on sedatives. I mean, his eyes, you just go back and look at the picture. He's loaded. Now, I think, was it the New York Post or the New Yorker? I'm not sure, but an artist did a rendering of him sitting there and then glowering at the camera. He always finds the camera in the courtroom, glowering, and they did quite a caricature. I'm going to see if I can find it and put it in the community section so you can just see it. It's not likely he will like this photograph. So I just felt he was sitting there thinking that he's plotting revenge. Now, none of his attorneys were speaking to him. He was just kind of sitting there, and funny about body language, there were 3 or 4 attorneys, but they were all facing away from him. So he was very kind of isolated at that table, but he was quiet. And the judge, you know, I'm sure you know this, made a little speech about inciting violence and did it to both sides, the defense and the prosecution, and said, do you understand what I'm saying? And Trump said, yes. And then he got on a plane, went back to Mar-a-Lago, and defied all the instructions that the judge gave him. So this comes to mind. Now, I think the judge did a very good job of the warning. I think it would have been preemptive for him to go straight to a gag, which he could do, because the family posted pictures of the judge's daughter, all kinds of information. They're all getting threats. But he didn't do that. He put out the warning because he's being methodical, I'm guessing. But I think that a psychiatric evaluation, and the judge can order it. He can order Trump to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, and there's nothing that Trump team can do about it. Or he could elicit a gag order in the next week, because Trump is not done decimating this judge and everybody who's going to be prosecuting him, inciting and all this stuff. But I think the psych evaluation is so much better because of it will just be so humiliating to him. So that's my opinion. Now, I did throw runes about what's up next for Trump in terms of a gag order for his threats or a psych evaluation, and the runes today were interesting. So the first rune I got in an answer to will Trump eventually get a gag order or the evaluation, I got the rune of movement reversed, okay? So this talks about movement that appears to be blocked. So right now, nothing's happening. He hasn't been served with anything. So it's pretty accurate. But the rune cautions, and it says, make sure, and this is to Trump, what you are doing is timely. He never worries about that, but this is what the runes are saying. This is even better. You must realize that not all opportunities are open to you. That's him. Not all opportunities are open to you, Donald. It is recommended that you avoid action. And I put little notes to myself. Listen to the judge. He's not going to. All right. Then I got joy. Now, don't get upset by this, all right? Joy is a fruit-bearing rune. And it says, and this is where it speaks to us, it says the term of travail has ended, and that would be ours. Our being sick, being worried, being offended, being angry, confused, offended, attacked. So the runes say this is an alchemical moment that we've never seen, which is true. That's what the rune said, that we've never seen. It indicates new energy blocked before now. That's the joy for you and I. It's new energy that has been blocked. And Judge Mershon removed the block. DA Bragg removed the block. The guy got indicted, and he's going to get indicted more. So the runes say something lovely emerges from the depths. That would be some of our relief. New clarity, because there's been no president or ex-president that has ever been indicted and perhaps incarcerated. And then the last rune from this question about Trump is separation. So this is about a retreat of some kind for Donald. And it says old skins must be shed, outmoded relationships discarded. The appropriate action here, Donald, is submission. Now that is right out of the runes book. I said the word Donald because that's what it means. He better be careful. This is entirely possible that he could get shut down, his speech. And they could even, put him on home detention. This is just me. Or in jail for 2 days, which would shock the crap out of him, right? So he's really, really flirting with something here that's not good. He's not going to stop. He doesn't know how to do it. He has impulse control, and he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. That was the title of the documentary about the Enron guys, the smartest guys in the room, or guy in the room. That's a good documentary, by the way. And, well, I'll give you that later. It was just a little inside stuff. Anyway, the last rune here, separation, retreat of some kind. So I'm telling you, Trump is really on the precipice of getting a psych evaluation or a gag order of some kind. Could be soon, too, because he's not going to stop. All right. I've got runes about this, but I'm going to talk about Tennessee for a moment. We're moving on. The Tennessee GOP has moved to oust 3 Democratic Congress people for gun reform protest. Now, they actually didn't even protest. They went outside to meet the throngs of young people that were marching for gun control, gun reform. They just went out because this is a Democratic thing, wanting some reform, to meet with them so that they would feel heard. As a result, and they didn't, they were very behaved, by the way, So their office keys have been taken away. They do not have access to their offices. They've been removed from their committee assignments, all 3 of them. And they were told, this is really dirty, if they are fired tomorrow, they will lose all their health insurance. But if they resign, they can keep their health insurance. This feels like a form of extortion to me. So the Republicans in Tennessee are calling them insurrectionists. They don't even know what it means, but that's what they're calling them. And they are voting right now to expel them from the state government. And this is written, I didn't write this, in a complete perversion of our democracy. It is a perversion of our democracy. So someone asked me, could you pull some runes on this and how it's going to work out? Can they legally do this? I don't know if they can legally do this. It seems really off to me that it's so radical. It's so radical and evil. So I pulled some runes. Will there be repercussions for this expulsion? It hasn't happened yet, all right? So I asked the runes, how's this going to play out? Will they be ousted? Will there be repercussions? There's a part of me that didn't even know how to word the question, but this is pretty interesting. The first rune I got was the darkest rune in the group, and it's called Stand Still. I often talk about it, but to see it, so there's no reverse. It's just this cold, alone standstill. And the rune says, the winter of your spiritual life is upon you. And that would be them. That would be these three victims. Positive accomplishment is unlikely right now. There is a freeze on useful activity right now. This is how it begins. Well, then they got protection, these three innocent people. And protection suggests to them, control of your emotions is an issue here, meaning they really have to behave carefully, smartly. Positive accomplishment is, okay, here we go. Stand still. The winter of your spiritual life is upon you. That's them. Positive accomplishment is unlikely now. There is a freeze on useful activity now. This is how it begins. All right, that was standstill. Now we go on to protection. Control of emotions is at issue here, especially during times of transition and accelerated shifts. Remain mindful that timely right action and correct conduct are your only true protections, and they are doing that. Observe your pain. Don't try to pull down the veil on what is happening, because you will progress. And that's the runes. You will progress. You have some protection. Then I got the third rune here is possessions. And possessions is a rune of fulfillment. Ambitions satisfied, rewards received. It looks to the deep probing of profit and gain in one's life. And it says, enjoy your good fortune. Now, I want to make a comment about this because the last two runes here were very positive for these three Congress people in Tennessee. It could take a while. They could get, expelled, and it could go all the way to the Supreme Court. I'm not sure, but there's something good that's going to come out of this for these three people. And man, I really wish them well. They are really getting sucker punched. There is no reason for this locking them out. They just want to get more Republicans in Congress in Tennessee. That's what they want. And they all are about profit and gain. We're moving on to Dominion versus Fox. The judge ordered Rupert and Lachlan, his son Murdoch, to show in person. They tried to get out of that, saying Rupert is, too elderly, but Rupert is traveling the world, visiting his many homes. He can go and show up for this Fox bash in court. And then that's the Fox host will have to testify. So we're going to see Hannity, Dobbs, Tucker, Janine Pirro, Maria Bartiromo, and Laura Ingraham. All of them are going to have to testify. And if they don't tell the truth, they will be perjuring. And that won't be good. Now, I don't have to do the runes on this. Trust me. Dominion is going to win bigly. Bigly. There is no other way, because rarely is someone as guilty as Fox in this particular situation. The judge said, quote, defamation was top to bottom, reckless malice. Fox was even planning on having the pillow guy back on Fox and maybe giving him a slot. Unbelievable. And this is personal, but I was, traveling Google, and I wanted to see who Rupert Murdoch's latest fiance is, because he got divorced from Jerry Hall, who had been married to Mick Jagger, as you probably know. They're not married anymore. They were married for 6 years. They got divorced, and she got like 2 mansions and all kinds of stuff. But now he got engaged again. I guess the guy likes to be married. So I saw a color photo of Rupert, like at his age right now, 92, in swim trunks in the ocean, sopping wet, no t-shirt, white skin, his chest exposed, and 3 people were helping him to get to dry sand because he could hardly get out of the ocean. It was decrepit. The picture was decrepit. And this fiance, who he's no longer engaged to, we don't know what happened, was helping him. And you see her, now she's not young, but to him, she's young. I think she's 59 or 60. I just looked at the picture, and how could you, lady, wake up with that? He's been married I think 4 times. I think this would have been his 5th time. And boy, what some people will do, right? Ooh. All right, moving on. This is about the Virginia teacher shot by a 6-year-old student, and she filed a $40 million lawsuit. Her name is Abby Zwerner. She was shot and seriously wounded by this 6-year-old student. She's seeking these damages from school officials, accusing them of gross negligence for ignoring multiple warnings on the day of the shooting. This is true. And that the boy had a gun, was in a violent mood, and they ignored her. Whoa, boy. She was shot in the hand and the chest. I didn't realize she was shot in the chest. As she sat reading to her classroom. And she spent nearly 2 weeks in the hospital and had 4 surgeries. So I think the extent of her injuries was slightly underreported. Poor woman. Here's what one of the NLP, my left ear people, wanted to know. I'm so sorry, this will not change gun laws. It really will take Democratic majorities in both the houses. That's just kind of the reality. It's going to be a long uphill with gun reform and women's choice. But if we can get Democrats in both houses, we can get some really great work done and make our whole country a little safer. We're really in treacherous times right now. We are. All right, so we're winding up now. I just had the sweetest little bit of good evidence last week. I went to my 99-cent store. By the way, when I tell these stories, I have some clients that just think they're hilarious because I'm always talking about being in the grocery store, but this is where things happen, for me anyway. So I'm in the 99-cent store, which I love going to the 99-cent store in my neighborhood. And it was busy. People were just buying stuff. So people that had these big carts filled with stuff, and I've got like one thing that I really needed. And I was like, oh man. So you try this line and then you try that line. And so I see a line, and there's this elderly woman, and her cart was really filled. And I was like, oh no, but I just stood there. So there was a man in front of me who was right behind her, the elderly, and he had 2 items. God bless her. She turned around and she went, oh no, you go in front of me, to the man. You go in front of me. And he's like, really? And she goes, yeah. And, he was very gracious and said, thank you. That's so nice. And the manager of the store was checking out in my line. So I said, you know what, Carrie, just stand here and be patient, because she's already done this for one person. Don't ask her to do it again. I mean, she was really elderly, and she had a cane and everything, and she was by herself. So I just stood there. She looked up at me and she said, you go in front of me. And I went, no, you just did this for this man. You're such a kind lady. And your kindness in motion, I said, you got to get on with your day. She said, no, you go in front of me. And the manager, I know him to be a very sweet, spiritual guy. I can tell by things that he says. I said, wow, that's kindness on the street. And he chimed in and all that. And she said, when I left, I said, you are very special. You're a very special person. And she said, you're going to love this. She said, us girls have to stick together. Oh my God. She made my day. She made my day. That's an example of good evidence. And I have an experience that has to do with Mercury retrograde. There is someone in my life from my past that really, there's a whole chapter about him in my book, The Comic's Daughter, in case you're curious. And I don't want to say his name. But when I met him when I was young, he really changed the course of my life with some incredible advice. He basically said, I was really young. I was like 18 or 19. I was lost. And he said, you don't know how smart you are. You need to go to college. And because of that one moment, I actually went to college, became a theater major, and it started my whole creative life and so on and so forth. This man who has won a Pulitzer Prize, moved to California from the East Coast. And I saw him a few times because when he moved to California, he didn't have a lot of contacts, even though people knew who he was, and he had made some movies. So I ran to him at a birthday party and I said, I'm working on a book. Could we talk about it? Would you meet with me? And he had time, so we met. And we met about 4 times. Now, at this juncture in his life, he's married and has children. So this was not a intimate kind of a lunch or a flirty lunch. It was like old friends, even though he was a boyfriend a long time ago. And then all of a sudden he started giving me the cold shoulder. And even the last time we had lunch, because of my left ear, I went, something's weird here. Something is weird. And I could not put my finger on it. I went and told my friends that was the weirdest lunch. He couldn't look me in the eye, blah, blah, blah. Well, then somebody called me and said, did you see what his latest book is? And I said, no. And they said, he wrote a novel called Chicago, and it's about the mafia and a romance in the 1920s. And so basically he plagiarized me, and that's why he stopped returning calls or anything like that. I saw it quickly and I was like, I'm going to leave him alone. I had no idea he had stopped to write this book. So I inspired a Pulitzer Prize winner to plagiarize me. And I was very upset at the beginning, and I thought, well, if you got to be plagiarized by someone who's won a Pulitzer, and be very, I don't know, just think it's funny. So my close friends knew about this, and I said, I'm going to run into him someday. And actually, after he got weird, where we didn't have lunch anymore, I actually did run into him. I was in a restaurant in the Pacific Palisades facing the windows. I was having lunch with, at that time, my 94-year-old uncle. So I see the guy, and I get up to say hello to him outside on the sidewalk, and he turned to me and went, his whole energy had changed. What are you doing here? As if I was following him. I went, well, I'm having lunch with my 94-year-old uncle, and I saw you through the window. And I came out to say hello. So that blew the idea that somehow I was watching him, trailing him, stalking him, and he was weird again. So now 4 or 5 years have passed. And I have said to close friends, I'm going to run into him, and I'm going to run into him at a memorial someday. Well, yesterday I got invited to a memorial, and he will be at this memorial. I don't need to, tell you why, but he will be there because the 2 people that are being memorialized, he was very close with. and he used them in all his movies. So I am going to see him at a memorial during Mercury retrograde. So the fact that I was correct and I called it is good evidence, and I want to share it with you. I've let go of a lot of it. I have this funny idea, because you know I like humor and I write humor, that if he says to me, "How are you doing? What are you doing?" He can be very charming, by the way. I want to say, well, I just finished a novel that's called Plagiarism, a Love Story, and say it with the straight face that I have with you right now, in utter seriousness, and then just watch his reaction. I don't know if I'll do it, but it's kind of funny. I'd like to do it just to go into shock. And okay, we're coming to the end now. Quotes. This quote really popped out at me. I just found it a few days ago, because we're so dealing with authoritarianism and fascism and racism and banning books, so on and so forth. So this is a quote by a man named Miguel de Unamuno. Unamuno, you like that name? A Spanish poet and novelist and philosopher. And he simply wrote this: fascism is cured by reading, and racism is cured by traveling. I think this is a brilliant quote. Fascism is cured by reading, and racism is cured by traveling. Miguel de Unamuno. I love that name. That just makes me smile. So there you go. That's our day today, post-indictment. We're just in the middle of the soup, people, and there's things we just aren't meant to know yet. Here's the good news. More indictments are coming. Some think in the next 2 weeks. People are trying to guess, is it going to be Georgia? Is it going to be Jack Smith? It really doesn't matter, because Georgia is huge, and it will probably be a RICO case. I've said this for like 8 months. And November 6th with Jumpin' Jack Flash, the brilliant prosecutor, Hague prosecutor. And so I think he's going to come up with a RICO. I think there's going to be 2. I'm not alone. Some of you subscribers, have written me notes and said, "Don't you think this is a RICO?" Or "I think this is a RICO," like meaning they think it is. And I wrote back, "Yeah, I think there's 2. I think there's 2 coming." But I'm doing that without the runes. I'm just sort of sharing that with you. I'll see you soon. Hold the faith. Make peace. Make good memories. Kindness on the street. Okay. You take care.